Hello, friends. To dive into today's topic, I want to begin with a story. In a small town near Boise, Idaho, a boy named Liam spent his summer at his grandfather's farm when he was 12 years old. His grandfather, George, was a stern but wise man, someone who had lived a life full of lessons, not just words. Without cell phones or video games, Liam's days passed in a kind of peaceful simplicity. The smell of fresh-cut grass in the mornings, dusty red dirt roads, and quiet sunsets that seemed to stretch forever. One afternoon, as the two were trimming the fence line together under the hot sun, Liam asked a question that sounded far beyond his years. "Grandpa, how do people become successful?" George didn't answer right away. He simply squinted at the light, gave a knowing smile, and motioned for Liam to follow him to the greenhouse at the back of the property. There, George carefully selected two young pine saplings, identical in species, height, and age, grown from the same nursery batch. There was no difference between them, except where each would be planted. One was placed in a large wooden pot and brought inside the cozy living room, where the light and temperature could be controlled. The other was planted directly in the western field, an area exposed to the harshest afternoon sun, powerful winds, and Idaho's unforgiving winters. George didn't explain further. He simply said, "Let's wait, give them a few years." And so time passed. 4 years later, at 16, Liam returned to the farm, taller now, sharper, but carrying a restless anxiety about his future. The pressure of SATs, choosing a college major, and society's relentless expectations weighed heavily on him. One morning, George invited Liam for a walk across the property. They stopped first at the pine tree that had been planted outdoors. It now towered over Liam, its trunk thick and rugged, bark cracked with age, and roots visibly anchored deep into the ground. Some branches had broken off during winter storms, but the canopy stretched proudly, full and vibrant, swaying with confidence in the breeze. Then they went inside. In the corner of the living room, the potted pine still stood, alive but stunted. Its trunk remained thin, roots coiled tightly within the confines of the pot, and a few lower branches had started to yellow. It was delicate, ornamental, still a tree, but one that had never truly grown up. George looked at Liam and asked, "Which one do you think is more successful?" Liam hesitated, then replied, "I guess, the one outside. But it had it so much harder, didn't it? The storms, the animals, the wind." George nodded. "Exactly. That's why it grew stronger." And then, like peeling back the layers of a simple truth hidden in plain sight, George began to explain, not like a sermon, but like revealing something that had always been there, waiting to be noticed. His voice was low and steady, each word landing like a tap on Liam's chest, waking something deeper. Pointing toward the potted pine near the window, George said, "This one was protected. It never had to face strong winds, freezing cold, or hungry animals chewing at its bark. Everything was carefully managed: light, water, temperature, safe. But because of that, it never had to dig deep. It didn't have to stretch its roots in search of nutrients. It never had to fight for sunlight or adapt to the world. It wasn't challenged, so it didn't grow." Then he turned to the towering tree outside, its branches catching the wind on the hill. That one out there, it had no such luxury. Every gust taught it balance. Every drought forced it to be patient and find water deeper underground. Every storm, every icy night, it had to root itself harder just to survive. It didn't live in comfort, but it had freedom. Freedom to stretch, to risk, to endure, and because of that, it became strong enough to shade an entire field. Liam stood silently, taking it in. His eyes shifted between the small, fragile pine in the pot and the strong, weather-tested tree outside. And in that moment, he began to see that the trees weren't just trees. They were two entirely different ways of living. George saw the look in his grandson's eyes and knew that Liam wasn't just hearing this, he was feeling it. He stepped closer, placed a steady hand on Liam's shoulder, and gently shifted the story from trees to people. "Liam," he said, his voice deep and sincere, "most people in this world live like that potted tree. They're protected, coddled. Their lives are mapped out. Safe neighborhoods, safe schools, safe jobs. They grow up in homes where every answer is given to them. They go through the motions because it's expected, and they avoid failure like it's a disease, because every time they fall short, someone criticizes them, judges them, or worse, they judge themselves." He paused, letting it sink in. They live inside invisible pots, constructed by fear of judgment, by parental expectations, by society's definition of success. And over time, they stop reaching, they stop growing. They settle for safe and call it smart. George paused, letting Liam absorb his words. The wind swept through the pine branches above, their soft rustling sounding almost like agreement. Then George continued, his voice a shade lower, more reflective. "And then," he said, People wonder why they still feel small on the inside, even when from the outside everything seems fine. They sense something's missing in their lives, an emptiness they can't quite name. That's because they're living in a pot, Liam. A pot built out of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of disappointing their parents, fear of not living up to invisible expectations. Or maybe it's built out of all the flashy, filtered versions of success they see online. They think they're safe, but the truth is they're trapped by the very comfort they've chosen. Liam lowered his head as if looking inward. He thought about the times he backed away from something new just because he feared failing. He remembered choosing the easy path over the right one, just to avoid being judged. George seemed to read his mind. Sitting down beside him, his voice softened but still carried weight. Liam, the issue isn't that hardship exists. Hardship has always been part of life, like the wind, like the storm, like winter. The real problem is that we spend so much time running from it. The tree outside didn't choose to be challenged. It had no choice but to face whatever came. Every gust of wind was a lesson. Every storm made it stronger. But we humans, we do have a choice. And far too often we choose to avoid. Avoid confrontation, avoid truth, avoid starting something new because we're afraid to fail. And when we avoid long enough, we shrink, just like that potted pine. George looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted slowly across the blue. Success, he said, isn't about never falling. It's about learning to stand in the storm. It's about stepping out of your pot. It's about allowing yourself to be tested, to be hurt, and still choosing to grow. That tree out there wasn't born strong. It became strong, one storm at a time. And people are no different. You'll never grow up if you only ever run from difficulty. You grow when you face it and find a way through. Liam took a deep breath as a cool gust of wind swept across his face. George's words seemed to shine a light into corners of his heart he hadn't looked at before. George smiled gently, his eyes kind but steady. Life wasn't meant to be lived inside a pot, Liam, he said, almost like a declaration. Every challenge is an invitation, an opportunity to dig deeper, to find out what you're really made of. So if one day you feel lost or weak, don't rush to ask, why is this happening to me? Ask instead, am I living inside a pot? And if the answer is yes, then step out. Let the wind blow, let the storm come, and let yourself become the strongest pine on the hill. Liam looked at his grandfather, then out at the tree swaying proudly in the field. Something had shifted in him, something that couldn't be undone. George's final words etched themselves into his heart like fire. Life is a wind, Liam. Don't run from it. Learn to ride with it. The lesson Liam learned that day didn't come from any textbook. It wasn't a motivational quote or a neatly packaged piece of advice. It came from two trees, one that embraced adversity and grew tall, and one that stayed safe but small. And maybe that lesson wasn't just for Liam, but for anyone feeling stuck in their own journey. Because success doesn't come from being overly protected. No one becomes truly strong without facing storms. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens at the edge of fear and uncertainty. So if your life feels limited, ask yourself honestly, are you growing wild and free, or are you just a decorative tree in a pretty pot? And perhaps what truly makes us grow isn't the easy days, but the invisible struggles. The mornings when it's hard to get out of bed, the quiet, brave decisions we make when no one's watching. Just like that tree, it didn't become strong because the conditions were perfect. It became strong because it was tested, pushed, and stretched beyond its limits. Life doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to be brave enough to step outside the pot someone else placed you in, or maybe the one you built yourself. Because sometimes, it's not the lack of talent that keeps us small. It's simply that we never gave ourselves permission to grow. So if you're in the middle of a storm, don't curse it. Remember, maybe right now, your roots are quietly digging deeper. And just maybe, a few years from now, you'll become the kind of tree you never thought you could be. Because sometimes, in order to grow, you've got to stand in the rain. I hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit the like button. It might seem like a small thing, but because of how the YouTube algorithm works, videos with more likes tend to get shown to more people. So your like really helps this video reach others who might need it too. And if you find my content valuable, consider subscribing. It really helps more people discover it. Thanks for watching, and I wish you and your family good health and peace. See you in the next video.